fortunately, I'm with a very, very close friend, and this I come up 2 or 3 times a year anyhow. So being stuck here is not, I mean, this is like my second home, but I just
Wow.
haven't felt, it was bad here, and then it got really bad there. So I never really felt like I wanted to get on a plane and go home. Several
Wow.
several international airports, being on a plane, just the whole thing. I've just stayed here.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to see everyone, everyone wherever they are. And I didn't realize that, George, you were not even in New York. I had no idea this whole time. I guess we never really addressed that the first time around, where people are. But good to see everyone. I can imagine and I'll speak, just personally, like this was just an incredible weekend. So I actually have something that I want to do with us that's a little bit out of the regular schedule, but I'm gonna just save it for the three. I think we said that we're gonna lock up the room at 9:10. We'll start in 2 minutes and just wait for one or two more people to come in, and then we'll begin. We landed off at the end of last week on Wednesday talking about word pairs and the delightful confusion that word pairs brings into our understanding of Hebrew, and in our kind of examination of certain prayers to figure out what those word pairs are and what function they serve. So just to say that it's not, I mean, if you still don't really get it, and it's not something that pops out as like, this is, I understand what this word pair concept is, it's also okay. I mean, it's really not going to change it's not going to change your ability to translate and understand prayer. I just want to say that, because it's not essential to understanding the meaning of the sentence, because at the same time, even though there's this noun situation, aside from the fact that if you were writing liturgy, perhaps that would be something that was important to you, but it really isn't going to make it or break it for you to understand what you're reading if you don't get the concept of this word pair thing. So I just want to put that out there, because I know that for some people it's like, what is this? Why do we even focus on it, and why is it that important? So before we go into that word pair review again, I think that there were a few more things left of this. Maybe it was the, no, I think, did we cover the definite article in the word pair and how we do it on the second word and not the first word? I think we did talk about that. Yeah. Nina, did you have any, you're muted. I don't know if you wanted to say something. Still muted. There you go.
Okay, we covered it originally, but we didn't get to it in the review last week.
We didn't get to the definite article last week. I'm happy to review it.
Yes,
in
a definite article in a word pair or word.
Okay, happy to go over that then. Yeah, so that's on page 43, PS, in the middle of page 43. So we can definitely review that today. And I do have a little section of the Siddur that's not familiar. So kind of a section that's a little bit more, I don't know, an in-depth in the morning service, that has a couple of examples of the word pair that we can kind of look at. And again, the words might not be as familiar as the ones in the book. I think the book tends to select the more familiar of the words. So sometimes in a text that's a new text to you, or an unknown text, there might be vocabulary already that's a little bit unknown. So it's harder even to just to break down what the vocabulary is, and then to figure out what is this, is it a word pair? Is it a noun adjective? So we'll take a look at that, and I'll just kind of give you some clues as to how to figure that out. And again, why that's important. All right, but you know what I want to do first? First of all, I want to say, personally speaking, I'm feeling so much better now than I have been for 4 years, but and I'm hoping that that's a sentiment that I can, share with the rest of you. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at this morning prayer that some of you might know if you did grow up Jewish, and if you did grow up in somewhat Jewish setting, then you might recognize the first prayer we say in the morning. This is our first week of learning. Again, our second week, but the beginning of our new week. And when we wake up in the morning, as children, we're taught to recite the Modeh Ani, or the Moda Ani, which is the prayer that kind of, resonates a gratefulness with being alive and being awake. And I want to take a look at that prayer. And I want to play you a musical version of this that I thought was just so very moving and beautiful, and might just start us off, with this kind of renew button that we just kind of got to press on Shabbat. So I wanted to just do that with us to start. I know this is veering a little bit off of our review, but I imagine that you'll be fine with that. So let me do that. I'm going to share the screen with the Tefillah of the Modeh Ani. I'm hoping that it's up here on the screen. Hold on before I do that. And there we go. So this is the Shacharit service. So this is, I have a PDF of the Sim Shalom Siddur. I'm happy to send you the link to that so you can all have that as well. It's very clear. It's got English on one side, Hebrew on the other side. And this is the very, very opening. As you can see on top of this, this is the chapter that's called Shacharit. And the Shacharit service is the morning service, for those of you who are not familiar with that. And the first section of the Shacharit service, so if we look at a Siddur and the breakdown of the way a service works, it's divided into kind of chapter headings. And then within those chapter headings, we have these specific prayers. So the Birkot HaShachar, you could see the word Shachar and Shacharit are related. That's not any news to you, right? Same letters, Shin, Chet, Resh, Shachar. Shachar is dawn. Shacharit is obviously the prayer of the dawn, so the morning service. And Birkot HaShachar, what does that mean? George, you're unmuted, so if you know what this means, you can shout it out. Birkot HaShachar. Oh, this is a word pair. Look at that. We threw in word pairs right into that. Birkot bracha, right? A bracha is a blessing. Birkot HaShachar is the blessings of the dawn. And this is the first order of the Siddur. If you have a Siddur nearby, you can, have that on hand over the course of our session. So we can, you can randomly open it up and ask a question from the Siddur. I promise you to send you the link. I have it on a very long kind of, I'm going to find the shortened link and put that in the chat before the end of class. But Birkot HaShachar is the blessings of the dawn. And this basically is the early prayers we say. So these are the blessings that we say when we wake up, we wash our hands. If I scroll through this, you'll see that there is like, the washing of the hands, entering the sanctuary. So like the very, very early blessings that begin the order of the service. So most of the time, it's not something that we would necessarily go over at a synagogue. Perhaps in a more traditional service, you would do that. And the Modeh Ani oftentimes is a personal prayer that's said when you wake up in the morning. And so let's take a look at that. And of course, this Sim Shalom Siddur is for the most part an egalitarian Siddur. So when we do have a verb, it is given in the masculine and the feminine forms. And we're going to see that as we go into the book and talk a little bit more about verb formation and grammar in the masculine and feminine cases. So as you can see here, if anyone wants to read this for me, and I know this might be familiar to some of you, so if anyone wants to volunteer to read the tefillah, to read the prayer, and then we'll talk a little bit about this, the content of it, and also something very unusual about it. Anyone want to take a little stab at the Modeh Ani? Ken, go for it.
Modeh Ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam.
That's it.
Okay. Shehechzar.
What's the vowel under the chet? The chet also has that eh sound. It's multiple dots, but it's also an eh.
Okay.
Try that one more time. She, he.
That's
it.
Zar.
Blend. Zar. That's it. Good. Keep going.
Bi nishmati.
Excellent.
Bechemla.
Excellent.
Rabba. Emenutecha.
Hey, what's that after the mem?
Emenutecha.
That's it. Emunatecha. Exactly.
Emunatecha.
Thank you. Very nice.
Welcome.
Very nice. So Ken, I mean, he has the him, he, him, his pronouns in his name, so I can safely say that he would use the modeh as the verb of choice, the masculine modeh. The option here, of course, is to also say moda. ani as someone identifying with female feminine pronouns would use. So modeh or moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. We're not going to go through the whole, well, it's right, basically, modeh or moda comes from the word toda, right? When we say toda, thank you. Modeh or moda is from that same root of lehodot, to thank or to be grateful for. What's interesting about this proclamation? What is it missing that we're used to seeing in something in a siddur? A couple of things are missing from here that we would generally be looking for when we're looking at a prayer or the idea
No
of
reference to God.
Interesting, right on. There's no reference to God. There's also no reference to, do we see the root bet resh chaf in here?
No.
Baruch or bless, baracha? No, that's also missing. So it's interesting. I think that I'm not really sure about the history of this particular saying. It's not really a blessing because it doesn't say Baruch Ata Adonai as most blessings do, which we'll have when we put on a talit, when we wear tefillin, when we wash our face. All of that stuff does have like netilat yadayim, the washing of the hands. Ritually speaking, this doesn't have any mention of God in it. So it's kind of interesting because I feel like this can be taken in a spiritual way rather than a religious way. This idea of the spirit of neshama, and you could see the word neshama in here too, right? In that second line, shehechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. And when we look at when we go back into the pronominal endings, which we obviously did look at last session, but we'll look at again with more depth this time around, you can see that this is a personal prayer, right? We're talking about the ani, the me, and the nishmati, my neshama, my soul. As a clue again, when we were looking at the cha as your, the nu as us, the yud, the e is ani, the ani. So it's a very personal, prayer, and one that I think is just really, I don't know. I remember it from being a kid when we came into school in the morning. That's what we would say at the beginning of a prayer before we even started the prayer service. So what I want to do is I want to play you a melody that I think is just really quite beautiful. There's no video to it, so I'm just going to keep the words up. I'm going to stop the screen share for just a second. I'm going to lock the room as I said I would, so that we're not disturbed by people coming in. For those of you who are here, thank you for coming in when you did. The room is going to be open between 15 and 10 minutes before the class starts, and around 9:10 I'm just going to lock it so that we don't have any. Let's see how I lock this room. Here we go. Okay, so basically, I'm going to play you the following. It's a beautiful melody. I'm going to have the screen share with the words so that we can continue to look at the prayer while we listen to. Just give me 1 second so I can find the video. All right, pause for 1 second. See the video? There's no video to this, so I'm just going to play the music while we flip back to the words. מלך חי וקיים, מודה אני לפניך, מלך חי וקיים. ani. Beautiful, right? I searched a lot for melodies, and I thought that this was a really nice one for us to listen to. So I think that there's a lot of really beautiful things in the morning service, and the reason why we were talking a little bit about why we're starting with a Shabbat morning service and not a Friday night service in terms of what are the prayers we're going to look at. It's because I feel like a regular morning service really does kind of, it frames the way we as Jews pray in a way that's about routine and regularity, right? It frames this kind of idea of what is prayer, what is the cycle of prayer. And Friday night is unique and special, but and Shabbat morning as well. But Shabbat morning contains within it the ordinary as well as the extraordinary. You know, the whole, the secular, the regular days of the week, as well as the Kodesh, as well as the Shabbat. So I will definitely send you the link for all those things in the email, so you guys can listen to that on your own. And let's get back into our text. So we looked at Birkot HaShachar. That's a really good example for us to look at in terms of word pairs and the definite article. So that's kind of where I think Nina had said to us, we did not, in fact, go over the definite article in the word pairs. I'm going to call up that slide again of the third chapter so we could take a look at the highlights of chapter 3. And let me just do this for a second, and chapter 3, and then we're gonna take a look at some examples. If we have questions about the word pairs, this is probably a good time for us to ask those questions. So here we go. I'm gonna move you guys out of the way. Okay. So word pairs, smichut, we said chapter. So chapter pages are always gonna be at the top of this. I mean, I'm hoping that I have all the information I need in the slide so we can take a look at the top. This is, again, we're just finishing up what we did on Wednesday, which is going through the idea of the smichut, which is the Hebrew grammar term for this idea of word pairs, nouns, starting on page 42 and 44. And I think we landed off in this, in the middle of this chapter on page 43, which was in the middle of the page talking about the word the definite article ha, and how we use that in defining this concept of word pairs. So if you remember correctly, we discussed that, well, let me ask you the question, what is the word, what's the strong word, what's the complement, what's the strong noun and the complement noun in this, in the order of the two? So if we look at, for instance, B'nai Yisrael, which of the words is the strong noun, which is the complement?
B'nai, the first one.
Why is that? You're not wrong, but why? Explain why.
Why is, well, because Yisroel is sort of clarifying which B'nai we're talking about.
Right, which
Being an
children are they?
adjective. Which
Yes.
children.
Yes, exactly. So the second word is always the complement to the first.
Yeah.
And we did talk about how it's not an adjective, right? It's not an adjective. It's not a descriptor. It's kind of like a clarification. It's another noun that gives a specificity to the first. So interestingly, if we look at page 43 in the middle, adding the, we would not use the word the for both of those words. We would not say ha b'nai ha Yisrael. We also, in this case, would not even say b'nai ha Yisrael. When we talk about the definite article, let's take a step back from using the definite article in the word pair. I'm sorry for speaking so quickly. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. When we talk about using the definite article, what were some of the stipulations we had for when we do not need to use the letter ha in front of a noun? Even if it's definite, when do we not need to use ha? Does anyone remember?
When you're talking about a place,
Correct. Why?
because I think it's considered by definition to be
Correct.
a definite noun.
Correct. It's by definition because it's specific. Like John Smith. He's a specific person already. I don't say the John Smith unless, well, that you wouldn't say that, right? That sounds weird. And yes, what else? What other cases would we not need to use the definite article ha in front of a noun? So yeah, a specific place or a name, Moshe or Yisrael, or any of those things would count. What else? Any other thoughts before I give it away? No thoughts, you guys.
God.
Yes, God, a specific person / entity that need not have a the, correct? Another one, which is a little weird, and I'll say it, and then you might be like, oh yeah, that's true. Here, how's this one? What if I said Toratecha? Toratecha, or Toratenu, or mitzvotenu. I don't have to say ha mitzvotenu. Why?
Possessive word? Is that what?
Yeah, what's our clue that it's a possessive word?
The ha,
The
anu,
suffix,
whatever.
exactly, the pronominal suffix. Right, so if I have a word that already has like mitzvotenu, mitzvot and the nu, like our mitzvot, mitzvotenu. I don't need to have ha mitzvotenu. It's redundant because it's already a definite by definition. So those are the cases in which I don't need to have a ha in front of the. So that was A. Now we're going. Let's take that definite article and move it into this idea of word pairs. So let's take a look at our examples here. It says definite articles are noun that refer to a definite specific thing, blah, blah. In Hebrew word pairs, if the last word of the word pair is a definite noun, then the entire word pair is definite. And the word the may appear in the English translation in front of both words in the word pair. So the example, Rosh Hashanah. So we would say, right, the head of the year in English. Take a look at where the hey is, right? It's never on the first word. It's not ha-Rosh Hashanah. It's only Rosh Hashanah. If I say on Rosh Hashanah, I say be Rosh Hashanah. I don't say ba Rosh Hashanah. Ba is an indicator of be ha is a definite in the. In this case, I say in Rosh Hashanah or on Rosh Hashanah. Another one we're familiar with is the second one there, right? The weekly portion. Parshat HaShavua. So it is definite in that it's the portion of the week, the specific one, but I never say ha Parshat HaShavua. I only have the definite article on the second word. That's the rule. And I'm not really sure that I can explain more than just that's just the way it's done. The last two examples on that list are exactly those two exceptions that we mentioned prior, which is one, a place, right? Eretz Yisrael, or even more Bnei Yisrael, because the children of Israel are specific, but I never use the definite article in that word, Bnei Yisrael. I don't say Bnei Ha Yisrael, right? It's always Bnei. Sherry, did you have a question? No? Okay. And then the next one, the last example of those four is Mezuzot Beitecha. And if you know the Ve'ahavta, the section of the Torah that we say after the Shema Yisrael, right? The Ve'ahavta, there is a phrase in there that says Mezuzot Beitecha, that we shall transcribe these words upon the doorposts of our homes. And why is that? This is exactly that pronominal suffix ending. Mezuzot Beitecha, the mezuzot of your home. We talked about this, I think this came up last session when someone was talking about the singular and plural, because this is another strange example of mezuzot, the doorposts of your singular home. I think this book, are they going into plurals on this? Not yet. I think plurals might, oh, we did do plurals on the bottom of this page. This will come up again in looking for plurals as well, because it's a little tricky with word pairs on how to pluralize one or two of those words. Don't worry about it. Questions about the definite article, just that, on this little section about the ha and how it's used. No? Okay, I'm going to, while we look at this for 1 second, we also covered the word shel, correct? We did that on page 46? Okay, are we ready to move on to chapter 4? Any questions about this? It'll come up again. I mean, it's not like we're going to close the door on this and never see this again. It'll come back. Hey, did anyone have a chance to go over any of the exercises and come up with anything that was confusing or had any questions about in the exercises? If not, I'm happy to move on to chapter 4. And remember, I can't always see the chat, so if you do have something to say, feel free to shout it out. It's not rude because we're a small group and we all should feel comfortable asking questions. All right, I'm going to move us on to chapter 4 because I feel like no one is interrupting me. Okay. Chapter 4, here we go. And now we're going into some fun things. Look at how much more grammar we've got going on here. All right, chapter 4 begins on page 54. And we have the 2 new roots for this particular section are natan and bachar, which is just like these two verbs are actually in the Torah blessing. So most of you or some of you are familiar with the Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet, right? The Bachar Banu Im Kol Ha'amim, the Torah blessing that contains both of these roots. So we've got any questions about those 2? Natan is a nice one. Natan has on page 57 the collection of words that are kind of created with this root natan, one of which is the word matana, a gift. And I think that that's such a nice, way to connect this idea of giving as a present coming from that from the same root of natan, to give, to grant, or to permit. Also interesting is the word netunim in the list on the bottom of page 57. The 4th word on that list is data. And that's an interesting one if we think about how we connect the idea of information or data to this word natan, to the root word. As we go through the book and moving forward again, you have to use some kind of part of your brain that's about like crossword puzzles and word analysis to try to figure out sometimes how did Hebrew come up with the words, the connection between certain root words and certain modern Hebrew words, or certain words in Hebrew that are like, what? That doesn't make it. Oh, it does make sense. Interesting. I always find myself calling my parents to be like, how does that word relate to this root? And they'll be like, well, think about this leads to this. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. So I find Hebrew to be like a great way of kind of activating my brain in breaking open words. So if you think your brain is a little needs a little exercise, Hebrew's a great way to do that. All right,
Maya, a question?
Yeah, Mia.
Yeah. So I just was for this root.
Which one, Natan?
Yeah, Natan.
Okay.
My eyes went first to when you said about gift to the first word, and I was like, well, it doesn't look like it doesn't have the first nun.
Yeah.
And then I looked, and it seems. Could you explain this paragraph preceding it that explains why the nun is gone? Because you know what I mean.
I can't. You know what
Or is there no explanation?
There is. Sometimes the explanation is as kind of, we go back to this idea of certain letters not working with other letters. Sometimes it's just about the construct of the word. Like when we add the mem is a lot of times a grammatical addition to when we're creating a word that has something to do with a reflexive verb or having something to do with a passive verb. There's some letters in Hebrew that are added to roots in order to create a particular construction, the mem being one of those, the lamed being another. So lamed is used as an infinitive. So a lot of times when we say like this, none of these examples have the lamed in front of it, but sometimes there's a lamed, sometimes there's a mem added. Sometimes letters are dropped just for auditory reasons, like that certain letters don't go together. I'm not really sure why the nun from matana is dropped. But matan, masau matan, matana, I'm not really sure. To be honest, I'm going to ask my dad when we get off the phone, and I can give you an answer on Wednesday.
No, okay. But you're saying, I think this is the first time that I've seen or noticed where the one of the root.
It happens more
the first.
Sue, it happens more frequently than you would think, but you probably aren't. Now I'm glad that you're seeing it. That means that your connection between your understanding and your recognition is getting, is connecting, which means you're learning it in a different way than you were the first time around.
Okay.
You'll see it. It's kind of an odd thing, but there are some times that certain parts of the root fall. Usually it's the first letter that drops.
Oh, okay.
If there is a letter that drops out, it's usually the first, and oftentimes it's a weak letter. So this particular root, nun taf nun, is not a weak root because it doesn't contain within it Hey, Aleph, Ayin, Yud, or Vav, which are the weak letters. But it happens. I'll find out why.
Okay.
I'll let
thank
you know. Thanks for asking. Okay, so any questions about those two roots? So we're looking at page 57, 58. If you have any questions about that, if not, we're going to move on to the participle. This is the most fun part ever, the participle. Anyone remember what we talked about last time? This is so exciting. We discussed this idea of participle, which is such a strange thing. And I'm going to use the book's grammar, and then we can kind of go beyond that if there's more information that we want to add to it. So as it says here, we have this idea of a verb and a noun kind of living in cohabitation. There's a strange thing here where we can talk about this verb shomer. I'm looking at the example on page 59. Shomer can be a noun, but it can also be a verb. And it's spelt exactly the same way. So when we look at the root shin mem resh, which we know to mean guard, and we apply it with this particular grammar form, we look at it as an o e. We bring it into this this box here that we looked at last time. It creates this form of the participle, and we can basically put most whole roots into this template and create the idea of this verb / noun. And what we learned last time, and we'll repeat it again for those of you who, I mean, there's a lot of things that I forget from time to time. I don't know what this little thing is doing in there, but I should get rid of it at some point. This little dot does not belong there. There we go, got rid of it. Okay, so basically the idea is in biblical Hebrew, there was not a present tense, which makes sense, right? Because the Torah was not written with that particular grammar in mind. It's not writing a present tense, it's writing this past continuous form. And that's another thing that we're not going to look at for a while, but the grammar of the Bible, which then kind of flowed into the grammar of the Mishnah, and then the grammar of medieval times. The present tense is a weird thing, and the present tense is kind of an amalgamation of this idea of the noun form, this participle. So when we look at shomer, as in, I can say ani shomer Yisrael. Very easy sentence, right? Ani shomer Yisrael. What does that mean?
I guard Israel.
Yeah, I guard Israel. So I can say, I guard Israel. And what's the other way that sentence can be translated with exactly the same words? Ani shomer Yisrael.
I am a guard of Israel.
Yes. Okay. So watch this. If I say, Ani shomer Yisrael, I'm saying I am actively guarding Israel. When I say Ani shomer Yisrael, the shomer Yisrael becomes a word pair. Why is it a word pair? How did you translate that into English? When you said, I am a
guard of.
So what did we say that our clue was to how do we recognize the noun construct? If we break it up into English, is the word of. So when I say I am a guard of Israel, Ani shomer Yisrael, I am a guard of Israel. Shomer Yisrael is a word pair. Kind of strange, right? So you can have that same, depending on the context. And the question always is, how do we know? Most of the time doesn't really matter, because it doesn't change it from I am a guard of Israel to I am baking cupcakes. Like, it doesn't change the meaning. It's still in some form, the word is shin mem resh, guard, keep, and Yisrael is still the same word. So whether it's I am a guard of Israel or I am guarding Israel, it's really a context form. When we look at prayer, and we look at some of the, on Wednesday, once we finish this idea of the participle, we're gonna look at the Birkot HaShachar, the blessings of, the continuation of the morning blessings are going to have these statements of what does God do? God awakens the blind, God dresses the Malbish Arumim, the naked. There's a whole list of this kind of action and that in the list of prayers. And when we translate them, they can kind of be like the dresser of or dressing the. And that kind of juxtaposition of the noun, the action, and the object of the action versus the noun construct are kind of, it's like it's a little bit loose in the way it's translated. But when we think about the original construction of this Shomer Yisrael, or in any blessing, we say Borei Pri Hagafen, right? If we're going to look at a prayer as Borei Pri Hagafen. So Borei, if I'm going to go into here, let me just get the annotate pencil out for a second. And I'm going to try to write in script a little bit so that you can get used to the way it looks. So Borei is going to be our bet. Here's our bet. Borei with an aleph because it's a creator. Here's our aleph. All right, Borei Pri Hagafen, which is how does that translate when we say Borei Pri Hagafen? How does that usually translate?
Creator.
Creator, okay, Nachon, Borei Pri Hagafen. So Borei actually, right, means to create. So when we talk about it in the blessing, we can say creator of the, right, fruit of the vine. Or we can say one who creates the fruit of the vine. How is that different if we think about the meaning of boré as a verb or boré as a noun? And it could be that there isn't really a difference between that. So if we say Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam boré pri hagafen. So blessed are you, Adonai, our God, boré pri hagafen. Versus, if you think about the logic behind that, is there a difference? How does it change the meaning of the blessing when we say boré pri hagafen, as in the creator of?
Is one more reverential?
I mean, I don't know that I have an answer for it. I'm curious as to how that resonates.
One seems to be just more reverential than the other, like a slightly higher level.
A slightly higher level, because I guess we're not thinking of God as being an actor, like a versus the.
It's kind of giving more strength to the, for lack of a better word, the title, the status. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, interesting. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about that? So the difference between when we talk about the creator of, so boré means creating of, right? As the same way we're looking at the word shomer. I'm using this example and reflecting it on the example in the book on the top of page 59. Learning or creating or guarding, and then one who is, the action versus the noun. Does that change the way we look at these constructed sentences in Prayer Book Hebrew?
Is one active and one passive?
I mean, definitely one is active if we're looking at he is, like God who is creating. I don't know. What do you think? Like when we say the creator of, I guess it's an implied action, but it's not an active action, right?
Passive.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But can I say, in terms of this particular one, you feel like God, to put it into the active present, God creates this. It's already kind of done. So so it seems more appropriate, actually, in this instance, to me, to say the creator of thee, because it's as Adria says, it's more of an umbrella. It's more of the conceptual rather than the present. What are we doing now? Oh, look, God's creating the fruit and the vine. Wow, let's go.
Right. No, I hear that. And I think that kind of goes along with the way that the Torah structures its grammar. And it's a really strange grammatical form. If any of you know anything about biblical grammar versus modern grammar, it's weird. It's this weird form that's like a past and a continuous at the same time. It's almost like a present, future, and past tense all kind of at one. So
can I just, because, but getting back to what you said, Sherry, but fruit is always being created. So it's not just like it happened one time. So that's maybe why it's a continuous process that's God is involved with, supposedly.
That's a good point, as opposed to the one who got it started. Now it's sort of on its own.
Right.
And that goes to say, Andrea, that kind of is that idea of the past continuous. Like when the Torah, when you look at Vayedaber, the form called the reversing vav that we put into that when we analyze a Torah text, or we just like kind of try to decode Torah text, almost every verb begins with a vav, and even though we know vav to be the word and, the translation of that is like yedaber in modern Hebrew. Yedaber is a future tense. Vayedaber turns that future tense into a past tense, and that's a Torah thing. It is not something that relates back to modern Hebrew. But when we think about what is the time frame of Torah, it isn't a clear-cut past tense at all. It's almost like there's kind of this balance between what happened and what will happen and what's happening now. And so in some ways, this participle, that this form that we're looking at now on the screen that has these 4 different cases, this is in some ways toggling between this very ancient way of looking at a verb, which is this idea of something that's happened but is continuing to happen, and a present tense. And this became the present tense only later in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew. So conceptually, the whole thing is really weird. So if it's like, well, this is like too philosophical and too out there, that's okay. It really is a little bit out there. Without continuing on in this vein of like a circle that we're not going to get out of anytime soon, we're going to just move on briefly to the rest of this case connection between all of these different forms. So we know Hebrew basically is divided into this chart of the plural, singular, masculine, feminine, and in a very base form, there are many things that can fit into this chart without having to go into the details of first person, second person, third person. Present tense, participles, adjectives, noun and noun adjectives basically fit into this form. So when we look at, if you flip now to page 60, this is basically exactly what page 60 is, with a little bit more of a visual than what they're giving us in the middle of that page. So what we're looking at here is the boxes, obviously the idea of fitting in our roots into wherever the boxes are. We can take most of our roots, and again, look at the very bottom, the little asterisk on the bottom, it says for regular verbs only. And there's a reason why I wrote that. Regular verbs only means, what did we say a regular verb was? I kind of briefly said that earlier. What is a regular verb? Shalem. Shalem, actually, there's a root we know. So what is a shalem? Guys, you know what shin lamed mem means. This is our root that we've had this. This is like the second root word. No, it doesn't mean peace. We know that. It doesn't mean peace. What is it? Who knows?
Complete.
Thank you. Complete. Whole or complete. So when I say a regular root, a whole root, what does that mean? Thoughts? What is a whole root? I really just said it a few minutes ago, but I know I talk a lot. So if you
mean with all 3 letters?
Well, yes, all 3 letters. First of all, yes, most of the roots that we're going to look at are going to be 3-letter roots. There are some exceptions, but we're not going to look at them at least for a while. But when we talk about whole, we're talking about strong letters. So what we mean is that there is no, in whole roots, there is no aleph, ayin, hey, yud, and vav. That's an ayin, by the way.
Are you saying that there's no weak letter in the root, or
Yes.
that there's no weak?
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
fine.
a shalem, a root, yes.
Okay.
A verb root that is whole means that it does not have these letters in it. So like, for instance, the root of the word to be. Well, we're not going to look at to be. That's really a bad idea. I'm going to look at the word oseh, like oseh shalom. So oseh, ayin, sin, hey, that's in the book as well. We're going to get to that too. Oseh, this is a weak root because it has a hey at the end of it. I mean, the ayin is less problematic than the hey at the end. The reason is that when I'm saying, when I'm conjugating certain verbs, the fact that a verb contains, a root formation contains any of these weak letters means that we're going to have some problems with fitting it into this template perfectly, because there'll be vowel changes, there'll be drop letters, there's other things that we have to take into account. So when I show you this template that we're looking at right now, it is only for those patterns are going to work only for what we call shlemim. So for instance, Baruch, right? Well, that's not going to work either. You know why? Because blessed doesn't work as an active. It only works as a passive. When I say ani mevarech, I bless, I have a mem in front of that, so it's not a good example. Let's look at, we have shomer, we have shalom also doesn't work because I don't say ani sholem. I don't make peace. That doesn't work either. Let's look at, all right, Mia, find one that's gonna hear. Bocher, choose. We'll just do this one. Noten. Bocher. Bocher, chooses. So, Bocher, here's my script bit. My Bocher. Bocher, to choose. My feminine form of that. So let's go back into the template and fill in the rest of this root. So I have Bocher. I choose a prophet. Ani bocher, ani bocheret. Ani bocheret be navi. I choose a prophet. Anachnu, same thing. So anachnu, this one is a little different. Anachnu bocharim. It's not bocherim, but this one is bocharim. And anachnu bocharot. Sometimes there's a vowel change, so it's not perfect. It's not a perfect template. But the idea is that you're looking at the endings. You're looking at the endings and you're looking at the masculine, feminine. Here, it's almost always for this type of verb, it's taf for the feminine. The masculine is great, is kind of our, which is why it's boxed. It's really the form in which we go to get our baseline, to understand how to operate with the rest of the conjugations. The masculine singular is like the constant in this particular conjugation. I'm going to stop because we're 1 minute away from leaving from the end of our class. So take notes if there's something that you didn't understand just now. We're going to go over it again on Wednesday with the example of, I'm going to go into the Birkot HaShachar as said, and we're going to look at the form of this participle in the way that it's used in the Siddur. And it might make more sense when you're looking at it in that respect. I'm going to ask my dad about Sue, about the question about the dropped nun right now because he's awake. He sent me a text message, so I'll ask him. Any other questions you guys have? Feel free to ask. No, nothing for now. We will resume on Wednesday. Sheyeh lachem yom tov. Have a good day, a good week, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Enjoy your Psalms class. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Mia.
you.
See you.
Can I ask one brief question?
Absolutely, Ruth, anytime.
What should we review in the book for Wednesday?
Review chapter 4. Review chapter 4 and see if there's anything in here that looks like it needs clarification. We'll finish the review. We'll move on to 5.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for asking. Bye-bye.